Hello and welcome to the Building a Better Brand mini course. I'm so excited you're here and I hope you're excited too. We're going to be learning a bunch of quick tricks to help take your brand to the next level. So in just a few minutes, we'll learn about the basics of branding, how to implement better marketing and brand identity strategies into your media outlets, and how to create design and visual identity that helps your brand be more cohesive and a lot more marketable. So let's get started. First, a little about myself. My name is Jen Wagner, and I'm a branding and design specialist. As of June 2017, I can finally call Nashville, Tennessee home. We absolutely love it here, moved here for music, moved here for creativity, and we're having a great time so far. My day-to-day work usually involves typeface design, consulting, and helping build new brands. I have my bachelor's degree in marketing from the University of Colorado, and I love my handsome husband, tacos, vintage rugs, and super great whiskey, of which Weller and Defiant are my favorites, but that's not relevant. So now that you know just a little more about me, let's move on to the good stuff. Okay, let's talk branding. Branding is actually a ranching term. You brand your cattle and you brand your livestock with your specific brand so that it's visibly clear. This animal is mine. It creates an identity associated with whatever it's placed on. But in terms of marketing, it's a little more in depth than that. First, your logo is not your brand. Shocking, I know. But let's say it again, just to solidify the idea. My logo is not my brand. It's a pretty common misconception, and I understand where that comes from, but it's true. Your logo and visual identity are most definitely a part of your branding. It helps visually identify your company. But if that was where branding stopped, Gap's rebrand wouldn't have failed as miserably as it did in 2010. Do any of you remember this? This new logo you see in the middle lasted for, get this, 3 days. And then they switched it back because their audience was so disappointed in the change. But why? Why was there so much outrage, literal outrage, when they switched their logo? It sparked this response because it didn't match their brand. A brand is a lot more like a person than an entity. So, for example, imagine your mom or your spouse or even your closest friend. Just picture them in your head. I'll bet you already know what they're wearing, how their hair looks, and maybe even what they're doing. That's exactly how brand perception works for a lot of people. It's more like a person with style preferences, personality, and beliefs. It's not just a logo. Now, imagine your mom or your spouse wearing something completely outrageous. Like, if I ever saw my husband wearing a cowboy hat and cowboy boots, I would be shocked. If my mom ever wore Converse shoes, I would be shocked. So when Gap put on a new visual identity that didn't match people's established concept of them, their audience was, get this, shocked. And so they switched it back. And that brings us to this idea. Your brand is their perception of you, not your perception of you. This is where branding can get a little tricky. You don't always have much control over how other people perceive you. But that's why it's so important for you to clearly communicate how you want to be seen by your audience. And this is where you have the opportunity to get kind of creative in your branding, telling your story in a way that sticks. And that leads us to this. A great brand does a few things really well. It's clear, so we know exactly what you offer and what value we can get from you. There's no guesswork. A great brand is consistent. You look and sound like the same person we've already met before. A great brand is recognizable. And this goes with your consistency. You have to use similar color palettes, photography styles, and logos in order to remain recognizable. And we'll talk a bit more about that later. A great brand also tells a story. Many of the best brands tell a story about you. For example, REI tells me the story on their website, just basically through the imagery, that the outdoors are accessible and they make you look pretty dang awesome. That the adventurous you is the best you. That I An extremely indoors person and a complete homebody can totally fall in love with the outdoors thanks to their brand. And this is a story they consistently make their audience believe about themselves. This is the best way to get your audience to perceive your brand the way you want them to. Tell them a story and make them the hero of that story. Finally, a great brand connects with its audience. And this partners well with telling a story. You want to be sure the story you're telling them is relevant and makes a connection with your audience. So at the end of the day, you want to make sure your brand is not just a logo, but a complete and cohesive experience for your audience. So how exactly do we make a brand great? Find out in part 2 of Building a Better Brand.